Okay, hello, starting again. I'll try and do this time. Okay, we're going to do a little illustration using live paint, just trying to loosen up a bit more in Illustrator because there's lots of different ways to use it. So I got in bad habits with Illustrator. I'd always tended to use the pen tool for precision, and I enjoyed that. I enjoyed all the flexibility, holding Alt and editing the vector points and editing the curves directly. And that's still a really nice way to do precision shapes. Today we're going to use the brush tool. So there's two types of brush. There's the paintbrush tool and there's the blob brush tool. Now the blob brush seems to create an actual shape. If you can see there, it's actually made a blobby shape. So I go back to that blob brush tool, actually by default. So you can shift and toggle through B, shift B takes you to the blob brush. I can make that bigger using the square, holding the square brackets like in Photoshop. Bonk. Now that, oops, just dragged the center point, didn't mean to do that. If you get the direct selection arrow, which is A, the white arrow, you can see that that's made an actual shape where you can edit those points. Okay, so that could be a quick way to draw something if you wanted to draw a blocky shape. Right now I'm going to use the standard paintbrush tool, which draws more lines. Now with that selected, I can go back to the brush tool, and if I press the square bracket again, it's going to edit what's already there. So that can be nice to just get a feel for what sort of width you want to use. Okay. So with that already, just do some loose drawing. What's nice about Illustrator is it sort of rounds up those bits, those lines. But I'll always still get these lines where I'm like, okay, I'm not happy. So Illustrator is nice for that because you can move the points around. Okay, one of the nice things about it. Okay. Probably want the fat outline for the outside, so bump it up a little bit. So I'm going to be using live paint, sorry, not smart paint, live paint in a bit, and I want to have as many shapes closed as possible so it's easier to colour them in. So even if your shapes go off the screen, off your desired canvas, then still close them off. It'll make things easier later. It's not entirely necessary, as we'll see, but it certainly helps. Okay. Okay. Shift E is eraser. You can see again it uses the square brackets. I can chop at things, but because I've got the stroke set to rounded, it's always going to nicely round off. So if you haven't got the stroke options open, go in here, Control F10, or just click stroke there, and it'll bring up the stroke options. So you probably know all about this, but if you draw a stroke, you've got the option to round the end, square the end. Oh, why is that not? That's not affecting this. That's interesting. Okay, maybe it doesn't affect her brush strokes. That's interesting. But say, for example, with a normal pen, you can see quite clearly the edges are rounded. Now, that's the cap. And then the corners, you can have rounded or sort of beveled, rounded. And then if it was a closed shape, so if this, oh, a little glitch there with the graphics. So selecting two endpoints, you should be able to Control J and then join. I'm just doing this for demos. You don't need to follow along this, but this just shows you how you can align the stroke to the inside, to the outside, or to the center. Useful for iconography, and again, more precise work, but worth to be mindful of how you've got your stroke set for this, because it does actually, there are ways to paint with it square. So these little gaps, traditionally you might be worried about them, but with live paint, you don't have to worry quite so much depending on the settings. So with all of that selected, Control A, I'm going to hit K, the letter K on the keyboard. It's going to take me to this live paint bucket. And this little three little icons turn up. This means you can move through your swatches. So if you haven't got your swatches panel up, find your swatches, again, window swatches. And you can see your swatches there. You can put colors in there. But right now, if I hover over here and press the right or left arrow, let's just press the right arrow, and it'll toggle through the colors. I can see them moving in the swatches panel as well. So none of those are the sort of skin tone I want, maybe. Okay. It's removed the stroke, any settings off the stroke. So I'm going to undo that. I'm going to go to Object, and I'm going to go to Live Paint, go to Gap Options. I want the Live Paint options, really. I'm going to just cancel that for now. So there should be options on, I can't remember, there we go. I think you have to hit return when it's open. I just double clicked on there, I found it anyway. Okay, so we don't want to paint the strokes, we want to paint fills. The highlight is green. Okay. Why is it changing my stroke? Not sure there. What colour for the cap? Bit of a gradient, bit of a wacky gradient. So with the swatches, you can also use the up arrows, I found, to jump up to the top of the okay, the boy in blue. I'm finding the stroke a bit thin, but you get the idea. Let's bump it back up again. Let's round those ends. And there you go. Basic, silly little character. But the lines are vector. You can edit them. You can clean things up. So now that was live paint layer. Here it will say in the layers panel, live paint. To make them actual objects, I'd go to Object Expand. And now those are separate coloured objects. Maybe I'll get a bit more control there. I can edit that gradient and things like that. Maybe make it more sense if I wanted to rotate it and whatnot, move the gradient along. Then that might supply more options. In fact, the opposite. But yeah. You get the idea. Alright guys, hope that was useful. and that's a bit scrappy. There you go.